Gregorio Allegri's setting of the psalm Miserere Mei has one of the most intriguing histories of any piece of sacred choral music. After its composition in the 1630s, Pope Urban VIII issued a decree excommunicating anyone who copied the work outside of the papal chapel choir. The precocious 14-year-old Mozart attended a performance and copied out the whole work from memory, returning the next day to make corrections from his score stuck inside his hat. Charles Burney published the work in 1771, perhaps from Mozart's copy. And Burney, as an English Protestant, cared nothing for excommunication from Rome, and thereby broke the papal monopoly and brought the music to the world. It's a lovely story, but very little of that is true. There is no record of any papal edict concerning the work. The story of young Mozart in Rome is littered with factual question marks. And by that time, the work had been performed in a number of venues outside Rome, including London, twice. Copies of Allegri's Miserere were regularly offered for sale on the streets of Rome to gentlemen on the grand tour throughout the 18th century. Burney's printed score is unremarkable and lacks the ornaments for which the work had become famous. But the most interesting part of the Miserere story comes from the 20th century. The version of the work that has been performed since the 1950s contains a curious mistake, which is found in none of the manuscript sources that predate it. The second choir performs a bizarre trucker's gear change from G minor to C minor, a move that Allegri and his contemporaries would have condemned as being contrary to the natural laws of harmony. But by an act of serendipity, to our modern ears, this copyist's mistake sounds compellingly beautiful. And it is at this point, where the entire phrase that we have already heard is repeated upper fourth, that we get the famous top C, the ethereal heights that transcend this realm of flesh, bringing our cries for mercy to heaven, sung 5 times by increasingly tired sopranos. But it was never thus in the Sistine Chapel. So why was the work famous? And what was the music that they actually sang? The genius of Allegri's composition was to produce a work that was at once modern and also bathed in tradition. The verses of the text alternate between traditional Gregorian plainsong and Allegri's composed polyphony. This polyphony itself alternates between 2 choirs, each with their own musical form. This structure had become something of a tradition itself in Rome at that time, but Allegri went further. The papal choir had yet another tradition of applying particular set-piece ornaments to particular harmonic passages. This was not ad-lib improvisation as is often thought, and Allegri constructed his harmony to fit not only the plainsong, but also to allow the performance of these devices to their fullest effect. Much to the annoyance of musicologists, the slip-up that produced the top C has been enjoyed by audiences for over 60 years. However, the genie, having been released from the bottle, cannot be put back. My edition therefore takes us on a journey. Instead of hearing the same music 5 times, we start with Allegri's unadorned framework, then we hear the same music with the ornaments for which it was composed, and then we hear the modern top C alteration, before both choirs come together for the final phrase.